So Lan, there's nothing like starting a new appointment. And both you and I have had the blessing and the challenges of doing that this year. So how is your new appointment here to the conference going?
Oh man, it is going good, and I think one of the reasons that it is because I really started leaning into rethinking the term hitting the ground running. And so being able to just take time and just slow down and say, all right, we've done a few moves now. Like, so what do we want to do differently than we did last time? And so what's that been like for you?
So for us, we had one of those experiences of finding out about our move a little later in the appointment process, which meant that we had a lot of things to do in a short amount of time, including selling a house, packing up the house, and then in the middle of all of that, my father died, because it's a reminder that life happens even when the itinerant process is happening at the same time. One of the challenges for my family was simply that still have a daughter in school who moved her junior year of high school, but she was the one who really said that she felt like it was what God was calling us to do, and handled it like a champ. So that was a blessing for us.
Yeah, the same thing. It was like when I got the call that affirmed the appointment to come here, it was like on a Tuesday, I think it was, and that Saturday we had been to make the final decisions on starting to build a house in Indiana. And we were about to write the check for the deposit for the builders to start building. And the call came and we prayed about it, and my spouse prayed and said, yeah, I think this is what we're supposed to do. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like we were ready to plant roots, and now it's time to start, which means like all that new level of not just a new job, but building new community. And sometimes I've been in the itinerant system in moves, and I've seen other people do this where like we're hesitant to actually plant roots and build community when we're moved somewhere because it's like we don't know how long we're going to be here. It's so exhausting to start all over again, that kind of thing. But there's something to be said about the importance of being connected to the community that you're being called to.
When I was a district superintendent of the Valley Ridge District, I had a wonderful pastor, many wonderful pastors, but I had a pastor on the district named David Vaughn who serves at Calvary in Stewart's Draft, who taught me something I hadn't known before, which was this monastic vow of stabilitas, which means that you serve every appointment as though you were going to be there forever. Now, you don't spend your time thinking about what is my next appointment going to be, but you're fully present in the community and with the congregation that you're serving at that time. And it's an interesting balance, I think, when it comes to moving, because, and this was particularly obvious to me when I became a district superintendent, because in the discipline there's an expiration date. You can only do it for so long. So I always tried to think about how can I be fully present with these folks, but also leave things in the best possible place for someone else to take the ball and run with it.
Yeah, like, and that's something that one of my senior pastors said to me is like, when the Lord gives you a vision for the setting that you're called to, make sure it's a vision that can live beyond you.
Right.
Because so often we build things in ways that says this whole thing is conditional on me being present to see it through. And it's like, that's not the case. That's not the point of what we do, right? Is the church lives on even beyond. But even beyond like being present, like professionally, I think there's so much that's good for the soul that a lot of us as itinerant clergy miss because we don't make the investment to be present personally, right? To just find people, to find our niche, to find our outlet in those communities, and say like, this is a place that can at least feel like home, and there's something that nourishes the soul when you get into that kind of mindset, right? Some of it has to happen, right? Because you had to find a school for your daughter to go to, and your wife had to figure out where she's gonna, work and things like that. And so, But then there's that just kind of outside of the necessities, it's just the things that say, these are the things that I can kind of plant my feet into.
Well, to your point about it, not all of the mission of the church not being solely tied to the appointed clergy, reminds me of my first appointment. I was an associate pastor at Warwick Memorial United Methodist Church in Newport News. I was an associate pastor there for 6 years, who followed an associate pastor who was there for 6 years, who followed the first associate pastor who was there for, do you want to guess how long?
6 years.
6 years. So
Wait, did they all become DSs?
just one. So
Okay.
but when the time came for me to move, what the congregation was not expecting was for the senior pastor to move too. In fact, he wasn't expecting it. And I remember telling this group of just key core leaders that both of their pastors were going to leave at annual conference. And this was a core group that was talking about expanding the facility in a significant way to minister to the community around it, which was an inner city congregation with all sorts of inner city challenges. And we told them the news, and there was just silence in the room. And then one of them said, "Our mission hasn't changed." And then they went right on with the meeting to plan something that would help them reach out to the community. And that was one of the best things that's ever happened to me in ministry, was knowing that it was going to live far beyond me.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I've been observing, especially, and I say it all the time, but I love that the bishop appointed you and I at the same time, because we get to kind of see this yin and yang between our roles and things and how we function in different ways. But one of the things that I've been appreciating is the constant awareness that has to happen of the balance between kind of what needs to be addressed like right away when we get here, and then living in that balance of like the importance of just taking time to build relationships, getting to know people, and being intentional about that. Somebody said to me the other day, don't just get to know the titles, get to know the stories.
Right.
And so kind of what's that been, what's like been your approach, what's been your experience with that, like what's that been like?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times my wife has said to me, "Doug, you need to slow down, you're too impatient. Rome wasn't built in a day." And my response has always been, "But I wasn't on that job."
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I think a lot of us heard in seminary, don't change anything the first year, which, and I understand the sentiment behind that, but what I've found is that there's a balance between wanting to make a difference, wanting to establish yourself, wanting to, in some ways, make the place where you've appointed glad that you're there, but at the same time realizing it's not all about you, that you have to pace yourself, and that the truth that resides in the stories of the people, whether it's staff here in the building or it's folks in your local church, those stories help to, they're a great navigational tool for how your ministry there is going to be, because people will give you what's important to them and what their dreams are.
Right, and that's kind of what shifts us from that ministry to ministry with, right? We're actually living out doing ministry with the people, and that, I feel like that lifts up to a different dynamic, our like Wesleyan understanding of the priesthood of all people, of all believers, right? That says like, I'm not the only one called here, that all of us are called here, and your story and your experience and your gifts mean just as much as whatever the reasons are that the bishop sent me here,
Indeed. And I think it's very easy, or at least it was very easy for me to fall into a trap of letting the appointment, letting however the church rose and fell, to own too much of that, and to allow that to kind of define me. I think about when Wesley got to Georgia and he asked Gottlieb Spangenberg how he could be successful as a pastor, and Spangenberg's response was, "Let me ask you a question. Does your spirit bear witness to the spirit that you are a child of God?" And I think if we lose that, and it's so easy to lose that in metrics and numbers and worship attendance, and all these things which are important, but they can't define who we are.
Yeah.
You know. Have you ever had an experience where you thought you were kind of reaching the end of an appointment, but you stayed and you were glad that you did?
Yeah. Yeah. Literally, there have been times, I remember in one appointment where I went to the chapel and prayed every day for like a month and was like, Lord, I need you to help me understand if this discomfort is because it's time to go, or it's because there's a new season, there's something big coming, and you're trying to prepare me for it. But I just need clarity, right? Help me figure that out, because sometimes I'm like, man, I'm getting it, like the air is getting thick and I'm getting uncomfortable, and just like, is it because you're saying it's time, or because it's time for this next season? It's time for like whatever God's about to do in the life of that church, and we need to shake some things up. I don't know, and so. And I've lived through that, and I was glad that I prayed through that, right? Because sometimes it was God saying, it's time for you to go. But sometimes it was God saying, no, there's about to be an awakening. There's about to be a new revival that comes through this church. And I needed you to get out of your comfort zone to get ready for that.
What I used to always tell, the clergy heard this a lot when I was in the Valley Ridge District, was, you know, when an appointment begins, you didn't choose them and they didn't choose you. But after a while, I think the laity in our churches start thinking, our pastor could have asked to leave and didn't. So our pastor is choosing us. And I think the reason I believe in long appointments is I believe that if you stick in there, if you hang in there with your people, if you build those relationships, if you become invested in the community, God will give you a moment of truth where you can stand before your congregation and you can say, listen to me. I have baptized your children. I have buried your dead. I have married your couples. I have been in your homes, in your hospital rooms. I have broken the bread of life with you. Now listen to me when I say this. And you can say something in that moment that nobody else on the face of the earth can say, because your ministry has been incarnate, like you said, not a ministry to, but a ministry with them. And I think that's why it's good to sometimes to hang in there, because the verdant valley is on the other side of the rocky cliff. You know.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I'm learning is that, you know, because I've been in some places 5 and 10 years, and some places 1 or 2 years, and the Lord said, you know, this is it. I think the thing that kind of hangs at the center of all of that is knowing the value of relationships. Yeah. Relationships with the people we're called to, the relationships with the people that we don't see, right? With the churches that we're not connected to, with the community leaders, but also just with the neighbors. Like always, the first question I ask people in churches when I get there is, what's your connection with the people who are in walking distance of this building? And is it just a transactional thing, or are you actually having a genuine relationship? But also maintaining that balance of having good relationships outside of the ministry appointment, right? With your family, Indeed. But with people that you can be accountable to, that you can be vulnerable with, that you can find support and encouragement with, and just like reminding yourself that you're not in it by yourself. Because sometimes this can be the loneliest place wherever we're serving in ministry, even when we're in crowds of 100 or 200 or 1,000 people every week. Sometimes it's just a lonely place. But knowing and having an awareness of what a treasure we have in relationships.
Indeed. Well, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad you made the move.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad that we're in relationship with one another as partners in ministry.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.